Hello, everyone. Welcome to this latest edition of our MarketScale webinar series. Today, we are talking about the latest and greatest feature that is now available to our customers inside of the MarketScale Studio platform, and that is the brand book. We'll talk a little bit about the brand book, and I have some excellent examples that I'd like to show you. But before we get it started here today, I'd love to hear who's tuning in to this one. Where around the country or around the world are you tuning in from? And if you already know a thing or two about brand books because you've been talking about it with your strategist or with a member of the MarketScale team, let us know about your level of excitement from a 1 to a 10. But folks, this is probably going to be a pretty quick webinar here today. This is a simple but extremely effective upgrade to your MarketScale Studio platform. And to set the stage, you know that we're here on a mission to help to make it easy for our partners to crowdsource media at scale. But we often have a question from our partners. Let's say I get 1,000 sound bites, 1,000 customer testimonials come in. How do I make absolutely sure that when we polish those, we edit them up, we have them ready to go? They look amazing. They look exactly the same. They're the same template. They're the same, look, feel, presentation. They're on brand for us. How do we make sure of that for 1,000 sound bites? Well, this latest and greatest upgrade, the brand book, is exactly how. But here's the thing. At MarketScale, this isn't really an update. This is something that's been happening behind the scenes for a very long time for us to help to make sure that we can make our partners' media look amazing. We can make sure that that crowdsourced set of 1,000 testimonials is awesome. The upgrade is that now you have access to it, same as we do. And there's a really particular reason why, because we know that now that y'all have the keys to the car to create your own brand books, it's going to make it just that much easier for you to be able to decentralize and engage your community, engage your crowd at scale. And I want to show you exactly how to do that right here, right now. So for the rest of this webinar here today, we're just going to present the brand book, the system that you can access to be able to create these brand books within your organization in Studio. I'm going to cover a couple of excellent examples of this in practice, and then we'll dive into a Q&A at the end. Probably make it pretty quick here today, folks. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to get started on the actual MarketScale Studio interface. And this is just an organization we've set up for the webinar here today. Now, to access your brand books, all you do is you click on your profile, top right corner, and then you can see brand books is now an available option right here. Now, I do want to call this out for you folks. At this moment, everybody can access brand books, but only your administrator can edit them. So it's a good note to call out here as you jump into this, since some of these actions are only going to be available for your administrators, at least to start with. So you can see here now that I'm in the brand books interface, this is pretty simple, right? It actually couldn't be simpler. So you can see for the general organization, I have the ability to add things like the logos. I have things like fonts, things like voice and tone notes, legal and compliance notes. Most importantly, things like templates, great examples of different types of media that use this same brand book that you want for our editors to have and emulate when they go to create something like your 1,000 customer testimonials. This is really straightforward. It's kind of like taking your brand guidelines, like your corporate brand standards, and just making sure you can translate it exactly into the MarketScale Studio platform. And here is the key upgrade. This is the main thing that we want for you to be able to take away from this webinar here today. It's not just one brand book. It is not just one set of logos, assets, music, examples that you get to use as an organization within MarketScale Studio. It is unlimited. You can make as many brand books for as many initiatives, departments, series, podcasts, live events, webinars, as your heart so chooses. And you do that right over here on the left. So you can see underneath brand books, I have the option to be able to create a brand new brand book. Once I've made it, I can edit that title to be anything. So I might say that this is my podcast series. Just like that, I have access to the exact same set of branding assets over again for my podcast series. So you can see here, we've pre-populated this with a couple of examples. So here is our stock MarketScale branding that's available. You can see here I've got everything from my fonts to my logos to my patterns, textures, imagery, voice and tone examples, great examples of intros, outros, the whole shebang to make it really easy when I point to this brand book and say, I want a MarketScale branded video soundbite for us to be able to do it. Same thing for our weekly webinar package, very much like what we're doing right here. So you can see our branding is baked into this brand book. Same with our secured podcast right here. So this is all of the branding, all of the assets for secured, the podcast, and just built and run it back again for every single brand book. And again, folks, I want to repeat, this is unlimited. You can access as many brand books as you so choose. You can make them for all of your initiatives, all of your series, various departments. The list goes on and on and on and on and on with the applications for ways that you're able to use this. So now that we've seen how the brand books work, I'd like to be able to show you in practice how these have informed certain really great examples from our partners in the past. And so I've pulled up a couple of great examples for you. We'll make very quick work of these before we jump into the Q&A, because I think it's going to become very clear very quickly how this will work to your benefit. If you had, for example, an employee spotlight series, you know that every week you want to spotlight one of the teammates that you might have in DFW or around the country of the United States or around the world. And you want to make sure that when they send in those soundbite responses to your media requests, that you can have the exact same template utilized every time. Well, just make an employee spotlight brand book and then go ahead and send your media requests, have your teammates fulfill them, push them into editing via Request Edit Now, and then you're able to create awesome templatized content like this great example with one of our partners.
My name is Kendra Luciano, and I am a senior marketing.
As you can see here, this is Kendra, and she is explaining who she is, what she does with this company. This template is utilized via a brand book. And so we are able to create as many of these with this partner as we'd like. It is a fantastic and smooth system that we've developed here with the brand books. And then the same thing will go rinse and repeat for many other instances of sound bites or educational series. This one here is actually a series that's called Dear Matt from the CTO of this company. Go ahead and share my tab here. And the Dear Matt series here literally shows him answering questions that he's received via crowdsourcing those questions from various members of their community. So a really, really good example here. Similarly, this partner of ours is using the same tactic to be able to create a monthly or weekly blog post, and then actually creating it via a video driver to point back to that full-length article. So another really great tactic here to be able to create scalable branded content that then points back to a larger asset. You know, another really great example of this, and I think one that gets to the absolute core of how our partners can drive tons of value through crowdsourcing through MarketScale Studio, is inviting your customers, inviting your dealers, third-party experts in your community to be able to create free branded content within your platform. That's exactly what happened here with Good Dog Communications, who is the customer of one of our partners. They joined into the MarketScale platform, and we were able to create this branded content for them via their brand book. And now they're able to create as many of those as they'd like. Rinse and repeat ad nauseum. For our partners that have dealer communities, integrators, any sort of channel or any sort of levels to their business, it is not impossible if you had 50, 500, 5,000 dealers for you to be able to invite them into the MarketScale platform as guest contributors, develop a brand book for each of them, and then they're able to create content, rinse and repeat using the same request process and pointing to their brand book over and over and over again. It's quite literally free co-marketing content. So for those of us, those of our community who are watching here who have, a channel like that or have co-marketing initiatives, this is one of the most exciting things that I think that we've been able to upgrade for our partners in a very long time to ensure that your dealers, your integrators, your distributors, your end users and customers are able to utilize content at scale. And this is really just scratching the surface of series, of guests, of crowdsourcing. We could go on and on and on with great examples like our webinar series that we're joining here today, or podcast channels like Healthcare on Air by Verizon, which are functionally speaking just brand books applied to longer media. Webinars, virtual streams, on-site projects to be able to collect testimonials. It goes on and on and on what you are capable of achieving with brand books. And so I think that we've seen enough examples, and I think for the most part here, folks, it's time for us to just go ahead and turn into a Q&A to be able to answer any questions that you might have about this brand book system. But again, I want to emphasize that brand books are unlimited, and therefore the applications for it are completely unlimited. Anything you can dream up in terms of an original series, a podcast channel, anything that requires a template or something that's rinse and repeat, particularly for crowdsourced initiatives where you know you're going to have thousands of respondents and you need to make sure that you have consistency. Those are tremendous applications for brand books. And for those of you who are able to attend my last version of this webinar series talking about the tag, I'm sure you can begin to imagine how brand books and tags work in tandem to help to make it easy for you to crowdsource media from your community, to turn your experts into creators, to make your fans into your marketers. And so with that said, folks, I'm going to go ahead and turn into questions here. I see that we have had quite a few coming from the audience. So take it right from the top. I see our first question is, should I upload all of my company's branding assets or only the ones I want to use for my videos? That is a great question. So ultimately, your goal should be to have a brand book for the video that you're trying to accomplish. If you are a MarketScale partner, I can confidently say at this point that your branding, the stuff that we've had on file for you in our master records, is now deployed in the general corporate brand book for your MarketScale Studio organization. So you have that to fall back on. But if you know you're creating something that's part of, for example, an employee spotlight series where it's not something that we've worked on in the past, that's really where you want to dig in, work with your digital media strategist, work with your editors within the proofing room of MarketScale to be able to develop that first cut, that first edition, and then we'll create a brand book for you for that expert spotlight series around that first example. So I think that's a great question. Again, just bottom lining the thing, if it's your company's assets, if it is your general branding, then it's already in the system. You got nothing to worry about. If you go and click request edit now and ask for that general company branding, it is in there. You are good to go. So moving on to the next question, is there a limit on how many brand books I can create for my company? I would like to have one for corporate, one for internal, one more fun and colorful. And I know I've said it several times, but just to reiterate for the person who asked this question, there is no limit on the number of brand books you can create. I love your thinking. It's a fantastic idea to have one for external corporate, one for internal initiatives, one that's maybe a little bit more fun, lighthearted, blooper reel-esque. That's a really good way to be thinking about brand books, and a good starting way even before you talk about series or things like a podcast. If you want to be able to make it really explicit what type of company branding that you want to utilize, what voice you want to utilize. I love that idea, and I think that would actually be a pretty good best practice to be thinking about. So great question there. Again, unlimited. You can have as many of them as you'd like. Moving forward here, brand books are so cool. Thank you. We agree. Can these be used for sub-brands and initiatives as well? I feel like I'm going to start beating a dead horse here, but yes, absolutely they can. 100% can be used for as many sub-brands and initiatives as your heart desires. Be thinking imaginatively, be thinking liberally. If you can dream it, then you can probably do it with a brand book so that we can create a scalable template around that idea and then rinse and repeat it for thousands of media. Moving on to, I think, our second to last question from the looks of things here. Even if I upload a full brand book into Studio, how do editors know which brand guidelines to use? We usually have more than one brand we use for videos. Now, that is an absolutely fabulous question. I'm going to see how quickly I'm able to pull this up here and give you a quick example. Because one part of brand books that I think is really critical, we haven't explicitly covered, but I know many of our partners have seen at this point, is that you have the capability to be able to point to a brand book when you make a request. So I'm going to go ahead and just set up a request here and then reshare my screen momentarily so that y'all are able to see exactly what I mean. So bear with me just one moment. Okay, I've got this up right here. So for this media, I'm going to go ahead and just click on the Request Edit Now button. Oh, whoops, pardon me, y'all. That is a poor example. Let me get you a better one here. Since that one was already in editing, we don't have the request coming out for the first time. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a dummy request real quick. And folks, if you have any other questions for us here, I see that we're almost at the end of the list. So feel free to pop them in. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to help to answer them. We're going to have plenty of time. So now that I've got this one in the system, I'll go ahead and reshare my screen here momentarily. All right, here we are. So I just went ahead and made a quick placeholder for you guys so you can see what this looks like for a fresh request. So now that I'm in this proofing and editing room, of course, I'd be able to leave my proofing notes on this at various points throughout the video. If, for example, I wanted to cut something out, or if, for example, I wanted to make sure that we could use certain text on screen at any of those junctures. And just like before, you've got that waterfalling out here in a nice little list of comments that our editors can go through and check them off as we complete them. But then the key update you'll see here is when you go to request, you can now point to a specific brand book. And this is the key thing, and this is really the important part that I want y'all to take away from that edit request button and this quick form that pops up. Your branding, the same ones that we took a look at earlier, from the MarketScale branding to that first Community Crusaders, from the weekly webinar package for the webinar we're doing right now, for the secured podcast, for that podcast series that I made as an example, I can pick any of these when I go to actually request the edit. So now when this edit request comes in, our editors will be able to see the entire brand book with all of those logos, all of those fonts, all of those examples, all of those templates right there at their fingertips. They'll know exactly what to do with them, and it will make it absolutely smooth. So a great question there. I'm so glad you asked, so that we could also show how this is integrated into your edit request form just to make your life easier. And then I see we've got our final question here. Does this have to be fully filled out? What if I add a brand book for a podcast? What are the most needed assets? Well, that's a great question. Honestly, I think it's a fantastic question. Does it need to be fully filled out? No, it does not. For example, if you had a brand book that just had a logo in it, excellent. You can point to that. Just bear in mind, too, that in the absence of any additional assets, we will default to the first brand book if there are things that we need, for example, like colors or fonts or lower thirds or other items like examples that we want to be able to emulate. Now, we'll override the logo for that example, but ultimately, I would highly recommend that if you are going to go and create a brand book, that you're going to want the logo, some form of intro and outro, and if you use them, frames. Those are the three key things that we really want to see all be able to add to your brand books. That will help to make it absolutely crystal clear what type of video that we are creating when we go to pull from those brand books. We'll be able to emulate the style, and I think that's going to be the absolute best practice. So a good question to wrap up our webinar there today. And I see that we don't currently have any other questions. I'll go ahead and start to bring it to a close. I'll keep my eye out here just in case any others hit the chat. But folks, I just want to thank y'all so much for your time and attention here today. Really appreciate it. We're absolutely pumped to be able to launch brand books, not only from just behind the scenes where we've been using them to help you, but also to make them accessible for you too, so that you can have control over this part of your MarketScale Studio organization. You'll have the access to be able to create as many brand books as you want. With those brand books, you can accomplish literally infinite different things, whether it's different internal or external uses of your company's brand book to be able to talk to your team or your customers, to be able to create things like series, like the examples that I've shown you, whether they're things like employee spotlights for human resources and culture, or they are Dear Matt videos to be able to answer questions from your customers in an external way on LinkedIn. Whether they are thought leadership sound bites that you can collect from your customers or from your own internal experts to be able to help to explain your position in the market and help to be able to break down key facts and education that your customers or your communities might need. Podcasts, webinars, the list goes on and on and on. But in closing, if y'all have any questions about brand books that we haven't been able to cover during this webinar, we of course want to speak with you so we can help to answer them. By all means, feel free to always reach out to me here. My email address is John, that's Jon.Baer, B-A-E-R, at MarketScale.com. And of course, by all means, always feel free to reach out to your digital media strategist via your dedicated service email at MarketScale, which is in most cases just the name of your company at MarketScale.com. We'll be more than happy to help you. For the time being, I'm John Barrett, Director of Platform Engagement here at MarketScale. Thank you so very much for attending this webinar here today. We'll look forward to seeing you at the next one. Hope you guys have a good one.